Hello, welcome back to another episode of Thoughts on Star Wars and Comics. Today, I wanted to move back a bit to start. As I mentioned in my last video, the main Star Wars line is splitting off, or not so much splitting off, but pairing up with the Darth Vader line for a couple issues. So, I figured I better go back and talk about some of the spin-off series, in particular Darth Vader, up to that point. And there are 12 issues leading up to that point in Darth Vader. But not much happens in it. So I'm just going to hit on the points in those 12 issues. But before I do that, I decided, I might as well go back and take a look at some of the one-shots and the limited series. Now, of course, one-shots are one comic, run and done, you're over. And the limited series are 5-6 issues long, and if they're really good, they get their own series. Sometimes they're set up as limited series, which I'll talk about, and sometimes they're just if they do well enough, they'll spin them off. That being said, instead of going through each one of these in this massive pile stack individually, I think I'll just pick the series out and then do a little brief, is it worth reading or not evaluation on it. So, first up, going way back to Before the Force Awakens, we've got Shattered Empire. Now, this one's not bad. It happens post Return of the Jedi, and it follows all the main characters and sort of just what happens directly after the events of Return of the Jedi. So you can see the cover to issue 1, classic scene from Return of the Jedi at the ending. There's a couple new characters. This character here is Poe Dameron's mother, actually, which is kind of cool. You get to learn a little bit about, his parents, and it happens before he's born, so it's a little bit of his backstory. And one thing I can actually say about this is at least it treats all the characters like they're supposed to be in the original series. Luke is a Jedi, he's acting like a Jedi, and he does Jedi things, although he does do things a little bit differently than the Jedi in the past, which is alright. He does things the Luke Skywalker way. So that one I do suggest reading, if you're actually interested in reading any of these. Next. Oh boy. Chewbacca. What can I say about Chewbacca? Well, Chewbacca wasn't awful, but it wasn't very good either. It's hard when your main character can't really talk in a traditional way, or has never been presented talking in a traditional way. They bring this kid character in, basically, and he does all the talking in it. And it's sort of like about Chewbacca rescuing slaves. And which, is a good story for Chewbacca. Because he was a slave once. That was established in his backstory, which is alright. The only good thing about this series, Chewie gets his medal at the beginning of it, because they didn't have enough resources or something to give him a medal during the award ceremony at the end of A New Hope. But it's fairly forgettable. Unless you really like Chewbacca, just skip it. Next, we got Kanan. Now, I can't really do a really fair assessment of Kanan, and the reason for that is I'm missing issues. But it's basically just Kanan's backstory from Star Wars Rebels. It's not bad. It's got some pretty cool artwork in it, and it's cool to see, some of the Rebels characters outside of the Rebels artwork, if you know what I mean. It's just about him escaping from the clones after Order 66 with his master, and his master gets killed, and then it leads straight up into, Rebels, basically, and where he is there. Good series. Nice little read if you really like Kanan. If not, I would just suggest skipping it. Unfortunately, I can't really say. I don't have the complete story. I'm missing a few issues in there. I'm missing issue 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wow, I'm missing a lot of issues in that. That's before I had the Star Wars books on my pull list. So, unfortunately, I can't say much about that, but it's not bad from what I have read in it. Next up. Oh, Obi-Wan and Anakin. Now, this was an interesting series. It wasn't bad. It's really weird and different. It's about them crashing on this planet, and yeah, they just have to deal with these two orders of people down there, and Obi-Wan doesn't want to interfere, and of course Anakin gets. Now this was in the original cover. I have a variant of issue 1. Whatever. But the artwork is really cool in it. There's this weird, like, steampunky world where there's, like, airships and older technology and stuff like that. There's giant monster fights. The covers are pretty telling of what's going on in there. There's even giant robots and stuff like that. And it's pretty cool. It's a nice little fun story with young Anakin and young Obi-Wan. It sort of takes place in his early teen years. So, in between episode 1 and 2. It's pretty good. Good little read. Give it a shot. It's not bad, especially if you're fans of like Ewan's Obi-Wan and stuff like that. I pulled another one out here by accident. C-3PO one shot. It's not bad. It's basically just a story about how he gets his red arm in The Force Awakens. He's got this little droid army, and they get marooned on this planet. One of them sacrifices himself to save 3PO, and he gets his red arm after he gets his arm ripped off or something like that. Completely skippable. Unless you really like 3PO. But nobody really likes 3PO, let's be honest. Okay, and the biggest disappointment from the limited series, Princess Leia, one of the first ones. Wow. Okay, what can I say about this? Completely forgettable story. Artwork's kind of cool, although, as you can see, the Wade, yeah, completely forgettable, but it does introduce the character of Yvonne, who appears later in the Star Wars series, who is one of the last survivors of Alderaan, and she was the Y-Wing pilot at the end of Episode 4 that survived along with everybody else. Yeah, that's it. Like, I'm probably getting a huge reflection from my light here off of these bags, and I apologize for that. But yeah, I would say skip this one unless you just want to read it. If it's not too expensive or whatever in the trade, maybe pick it up. But it wasn't a good story. Next up, yeah, Lando. The original Lando series. There's one running now. We'll talk about that later. It's not finished yet, so I'm not going to talk about it until it's finished. But this Lando is pretty cool. This is in between Empire, in between A New Hope and Empire. Follows Lando. He's got his little crew on his ship. Lobot's there. It explains a lot of Lobot's backstory, which is kind of cool. It's a really neat. It's like a heist story, which is kind of cool. They try to steal a ship, and it turns out to be the Emperor's ship, and it's full of Sith artifacts. And some of the Sith artifacts infect some of his crew. Lobot's got this computer enhancement in his brain, and eventually the computer enhancement takes over after some weird stuff going on. But which explains the way he is in Empire. It's a good read. I highly recommend Lando. Really good read. Alright, what's next here? Han Solo. Han Solo. Han Solo is skippable. Sorry for the noise, that was my cat. Han Solo is completely skippable. basically this happens in between or during the Star Wars main series, and it's about him having to run the Kessel Run again. And as far as I can tell from what I've read about Solo, the movie, I haven't seen it, but this kind of contradicts a lot of stuff in that movie, which is kind of weird. It came out before it, but the continuity in new Star Wars EU is not good at all. And there's some interesting stuff in this with other dimensions and stuff like that that come up, which, I don't know. It's really sad because this could have been really good, but it's completely forgettable story. Covers are kind of cool. If you really like Han Solo, they would make nice posters. But that's all that the series really brings. Next is Darth Maul. Darth Maul is a cool little limited 5-part series. I suggest picking it up. There's some nice stuff in there. It's just about him training before Episode 1. There's some decent artwork in it. You get Cad Bane and Aurra Sing and stuff like that. And he fights this young Padawan that he finds on the planet and kills her. It's sort of like his Sith training before Episode 1. And it sort of ties into the beginning of that movie. Pick it up. It's not bad. What do we got next? Droids Unplugged. Useless fucking book. Excuse my language. It's just short stories with droids. It's useless. I can't even remember this one. Whatever. It's there. Oh. Captain Phasma. This is the lead up to The Last Jedi. Now, this is not a bad story. This Captain Phasma story. It's got some cool artwork in it. It contradicts a lot of the setup in between the movies, because this seems to take place over months, and it doesn't appear to be months in between Force Awakens and Last Jedi. So it's weird. It's not a bad story, but it makes no sense now. I will probably go over this one in detail more later, because I think it warrants a good look at to show you that the story group really has no idea what they're doing, and that it really isn't a cohesive story or anything like that, and how much The Last Jedi just ruined everything that they had been building up to in comics to this point, which I'll also get into in the Poe Dameron series, which is a long-running series, so we'll talk about that one later. It's too bad, because that could have been a really good book. Mace Windu. Jedi of the Republic. Not a bad book. Completely pointless. It's just Mace and a couple Jedis out on a mission. I got my Samuel L. Jackson variant for issue 1, which is awesome. If you're a big Mace Windu fan, it's an okay read. But it's skippable. There's this weird droid bounty hunter and stuff in it, but skippable. And then the most skippable book ever, DJ Most Wanted, a one-shot. Terrible. And it's so weird because basically he planned on getting thrown in jail so he could meet up with Rose and Finn in Last Jedi. Why? Like, the plot makes no sense. Alright, well, anyway. You know how I feel about Last Jedi. So, there's all of the weird one-shots and stuff like that that I have in my keeping, other than a couple other ones, which are still going. There's still Dr. Aphra, which we'll get into in Darth Vader. There's Poe Dameron, and there's a new Lando series running right now, all of which I'll talk about later. But right now, we're going to move into Darth Vader in the next episode, and we'll go from there. Thanks.